Lake Forest podcast is supported by viewers, listeners, and businesses just like you. Are we giving out necklaces next week?
Give out necklaces every week.
Okay.
At Lake Forest Day, yeah.
All right.
I just got to figure out whether you got a truck?
I got a pickup truck. My sister will drive. We sit in the back. We wave and we tell everybody beforehand, meet us over at the beer tent, and we'll have all the beads there because they're too hard to give out walking through. So we can say that on the show here too.
Okay. Yeah, because Drew can't be there because he has to work. Lauren may have a doctor's appointment. I don't know if we're trying to see. And if she has a doctor's appointment, that means Debbie's also unavailable because she's got to take her to the doctor.
If it's me and you, brother, or even Jed, we'll take Jed.
Take Jed any day.
The mayor of Westminster Avenue.
Yes. Ward 1 is a tough ward.
Here.
I think you need to get your camera on there, Alderman.
Hit the button.
Let's see. Start my video. Okay.
There you go.
Okay, there we go.
There he is.
Hey guys, nice to see you.
Jed,
good morning, Alderman.
Yeah, so the Alderman title, that sticks with you for life?
I guess so. Eventually it fades away, I think.
Once an alderman, always an alderman, right?
Yeah. Well, there have been a lot of great aldermen over the years. Yeah, it's hard to remember who they all are.
Well, you certainly were one of them. I mean, and that's why we wanted to have you on here. So you were alderman of what, Ward 1?
Ward 1 from 2017 to 2023 when I finished my term.
You went out with Mayor George.
Yeah. Well, term limits are good in Lake Forest.
I think we all agree on that one, that's for sure.
Yes.
Joe, how did you get the Alderman to come on?
Well, I called him and he said yes. That's very simple.
Well,
it was easy.
Happy to talk about city finances because there's a lot of good things to talk about. So
okay.
Happy to do it.
So let's talk about what your role was at the city with finances, but then also your professional role in the finance area as well.
Sure. Right. So when I joined as an alderman in 2017, you get a city committee finance position. So I was the finance chairman for the finance committee for those 6 years that I was as part of the group. But my professional career, I got a Kellogg MBA degree in finance. And after that, I left the school and went to work for Arthur Young, which was originally by itself, but eventually merged with Ernst & Young. Ernst & Whitney became Ernst & Young. So I worked on the audit and finance accounting side for a number of years, and then I switched over to consulting. I did financial systems consulting for a number of years, and then began to focus on the public sector. And I eventually became head of the public sector consulting practice in Chicago. And in that period of time, we did financial systems for Lake County, Cook County, City of Chicago, CTA, State of Illinois, various departments in Springfield. So I had a lot of experience on fund accounting and what's the best way to account for all your expenses and fixed costs. So it was a lot of fun. So, and I went on to other stuff, but that sort of set me up to flow into the finance chairman's role at the city.
Alderman, you know anything about bonds?
I know a little bit. I've never sold any, but I know, I want to tell you about the Moody's evaluation of our bond situation at some point, because we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from Moody's about our bonds.
Yeah, let's do it.
AAA their fund rate. So.
Well, is it positive? Tell us.
Okay. Well, yeah, it is. It's very positive. So I just picked up from Director Holla the Moody's rating from our last bond issue, which was in 2023. Let me just read from it because in their summary statement, they said that the city's financial position is exceptional. across its governmental and business type activities. Leverage is moderate and adjusted fixed costs are low. And then they went on to say after that, the outlook also reflects our view that the long-term liabilities will remain moderate, but not materially grow because of the strong pension contribution practice. So at some point in our conversation, we should talk about the pension, but they're very positive about our situation, which is why we have the AAA bond rating. And that's important to keep because if it drops down, it's going to be very difficult to get it back. And that's going to result in more interest expense for future city residents.
So what are the things that can make it go down? What are the bad steps a city could take to make their bond rating go down?
Sure. So it's any change in the financial makeup of the city. If it starts overspending on a routine basis, that would impact it. If they went out and bonded, obviously beyond what Moody thinks is reasonable for a community of our size. And I might add that when you look at our AAA bond rating, our per capita debt, when you compare to the other AAA bonded or AAA rated communities, is about half of what the AAA bond ratings, their financial debt is across those top rated communities. So if we go out and over bond, that's going to be a big problem. So those are probably the primary things. The pension fund, again, I'll just touch on it briefly, but we were facing, when I started, a fast rising pension contribution problem because the state had told all the communities that these funds had to be fully funded by 2040. So in 2017, we were facing a steep rise in pension costs. So we redid our model and to flatten it out so that the current residents leading up to 2040 would pay a fair share, but not all the future pension contributions for residents after that. So it flattened it out. So that the Moody's like that a lot because a lot of communities in Illinois are facing steep increases in their annual pension fund contributions.
When we look at other, like, I think the state of Illinois is the poster child for bad financial behavior.
Correct.
And
Yes.
you audited them or whatever you did with them back in the day. They missed a bunch of pension payments deliberately. They called it the pension funding holiday. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago with Senator Garrett. Those are and their bond rating went to like junk at some point.
Probably.
I think it's gotten up a little.
I'm not familiar with all the communities, but that sounds correct. One of the things that I was just going to say that what got us in trouble in the state, there's three kinds of pension funds in the state, and they're all benefit-based pension plans. But there's a regular employee pension fund that has always been managed by the state, but the police and fire pension funds have always been managed locally. But the state kept increasing the benefit plan for police officers and firefighters. So you quickly got behind on your funding because the benefits kept going up. It's stabilized now, which is why we're able to flatten out our pension contribution and make sure that we don't bankrupt the city with, because the pension, the firefighters and the police, they do a lot of work. I don't know if you've ever gone out switch to the police academy when Chief Waldorf had the police academy and you could sign up. It's a one evening for 10 weeks. And it's amazing the job that those guys do. So I don't begrudge their pension contribution, but we need to manage it so that it's flat and affordable and doesn't put too much burden on the current residents. And so that the future residents after 2040 don't have to pay much. So we flatten it out and everybody's going to share going forward.
Jed, two questions for you, and then Joe, you take over. Help me understand the school bond. I know the school is a separate thing from the city, but everybody's beefing about how that bond was raised, how the financing was done. Do you have any thoughts on that, number one? And then number two, when somebody says that we are over bonded or we're at our limit. Is there such a thing? I'll hang up and listen for my answer.
I can't comment too much on how how the school district did their bonding. I know Dr. Montgomery, went through the normal process after looking what the capital needs are for the high school. And one of the things you run into in the city government is pushing modernization down the road and not addressing it on a pay-as-you-go basis. So he was stuck in trying to increase or improve the overall educational quality at that building. So, they passed the referendum by a few votes, I know, but I don't know beyond that their mechanism for going out to the market and selling those bonds. And what was your second question? Was
Well, Joe, can you help me word it? Because Susan Garrett was on the show the last couple of weeks, and she brought up something that she heard that there's some grumbling behind the scenes that we may be at our limit on bonds. Joe, how do I word that?
Well, I think she implied the concern that she had. I don't know how you feel, Alderman, but that the city is putting itself into so much debt with the with the new playing fields out by Deerpath and possibly the new police station. Is that going to cost the taxpayers in the long run?
Yeah. Can I share something on my screen with you guys? Would that work?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Let me try it
Power,
again here.
PowerPoint saved Donald Trump's life, right? Because he had to turn his
Yeah.
head to.
All right. So this was the screen that was at the city council meeting the other day on the 15th. There's a couple important points here. One, back in 2008, the council set up a maximum for the debt service capacity. So it was at 3 million, and it's incremented every year based on construction inflation. So that blue dotted line is what it's been historically. And Director Holla then added the yellow line for what she projects based on that construction cost of construction increases. So it's generally about 3%, varies a little bit each year. So you can see how it's projected out. And the other thing is we're a home rule community. So we aren't obligated to adhere to any other standards other than our own about how much debt we have. But we've had this history of keeping moderate debt levels. So the red is the historic bond levels that we've had for things like the water plant modernization and such. And then the green is the bonded debt for the playing fields. And then the blue hashed part is what we allocate each year for capital improvements. So it's not debt per se, it's allocation from our general fund to our capital fund for capital projects. And Senator Garrett mentioned street surfacing. I'll talk about this in a minute, but there's a lot of projects that we look at every year. So this blue comes from the general fund, comes over the capital fund, so we can take on those projects. So you can see now we've bumped up to the yellow line with respect to our capital debt service capacity, which is self-imposed. And then you can see in futures 2031, 2032, 2033, it drops off because all those bond issues are finished.
Jed, I don't want to mess you up, but you said self-imposed. I think that's the key word that people are getting. Joe, am I right?
Yeah, that we have a self-imposed. Is it a tax cap, Jed?
It's not tax cap. It's how much we spend on bonds and capital improvements. So our tax levy is about 22% of the taxpayer's bill. And as you mentioned in previous sessions, our tax levy is pretty low. It's certainly lowest in Lake County, might be the lowest on the North Shore, but this is intended to not let us get out of whack with our capital spending in relation to our tax levy, if that makes sense.
Where does the self-imposed come in? The city council votes on it, or let
Yes,
me
every year
understand
there's,
that like I'm a eighth grader.
sure. So yes, the city council budgets every year. Our budget begins May 1st. So in the fall, the director's Hollop starts meeting with all departments. What do we need? What might we need for capital improvement, hence the playing fields? And she does all that modeling over the course of the months through the spring when the city council votes on the budget, which then specifies exactly what we're going to spend for capital. And if there's been a need for a bond issue, that would have been voted on with the city council as well.
So
So we have,
we can raise that. It's
Yes, this,
self-imposed, but
yeah.
okay, got it. All right. Now I understand. Continue.
we never have, the city has never gone beyond its
Right,
self-imposed limit, right?
right. This is a tradition, being a home rule community, that we've had for years now. So going forward in the police station, all of that capital it can be paid for in a number of different ways. We have a lot of different levels. We have the bonding ability. We have this capital debt service capacity that we could increase if we voted to do that. There is capital funding that comes from the general fund as part of the tax funding for the city. And so Director Hollow will be able to model all of this stuff and then bring it back to the city council as to what's the best choice. Should we stick with our yellow dotted line? Should we increase that? Should we take on more debt? You can see the debt falls off pretty well dramatically in 2032, and as does the school board. As I understand it, theirs falls off as well. So the community will see a pretty big drop in bonded expense when you get into 2032, 2033.
So taking that too, as you just said, the police station issue, because a lot of people are raising a lot of concerns. There were a few people that spoke at the last council meeting, and
Sure.
Senator Garrett expressed some concerns, and I've seen some online comments as well that people see the picture of that big tall building on Field Drive, be the world's largest police station, all sorts of crazy comments. But this is something that if you finance it over time, the taxpayers don't, and you properly manage the debt, the taxpayers really don't feel the cost of it compared to somebody just going out and spending all that cash up front.
Sure. And I'm not that close to the city council's deliberation about the police station, but having gone through the police academy, I can appreciate their problem. And that was 2017. The bigger issue is, where would you put a new police station if in fact we agree we need one? And that's a big issue. So this sort of dropped in our lap in terms of the ability to fund a new station at a substantially discounted cost. If you hear the other communities, I think down in Wilmette, they have a big project to do this new police station. So they're going to have to decide, and Director Hobbs is going to have to model this as to how that rehabilitation cost for the building would be funded. And I think the city manager pointed out that there are probably a lot of choices we have when we go into the remodeling about what do we do and what do we defer for future years, and if there's lease opportunities in the other space. So I'm not that close to it, but I would think all those things are work into a financial model that would work.
Would it be a safe statement to say that it's better to do what the city's doing than to build a station from scratch?
Well, I guess we'll see. I mean, it depends on how this cost works out, and if everyone agrees the new police station is important. And I point that out because we've had this problem in the city of not supporting modernization. So, the library is going through a new modernization, very costly. The high school is doing that. There are a lot of instances in the city where the institutions have operated based on funding programs as opposed to maintenance and modernization. So I think we've done about as much as we can based on my experience at the academy, but I think we'll have to see what the city council, I trust the city council because I think they're seriously interested in how much tax burden we put on the taxpayer, hence the low tax rate that we have. And I think they're very concerned about what services the community needs to make this a livable community, and they try and monitor that, manage that very
Well,
closely.
I know when we had former Mayor Rob Lansing on, he talked about how Lake Forest is full of people from the financial world like you, a
Mhm.
lot of financial professionals. So their their boards and commissions and stuff are loaded. You've got some of the best talent in the country
Mhm.
at their fingertips
Mhm.
to help guide the city and give advice
Yes.
to the city on this. So, and that's
Mhm.
part of why we've been able um, to do the things we've been able to do with, as you said, the lowest tax rating, certainly in Lake County, perhaps the North Shore of any municipal government, and then maintaining that AAA bond rating. There's somebody mentioned the Triple Crown, that the city has a Triple Crown in finance. What's that?
What that is the Government Officers Financial Association, which is the national association of all public sector financial managers. Big group of people. They put out a report every year on the quality of your budget document and the quality of your financial reporting document. And they've given us top ratings. I think we're in the top 1,600 communities in the country, which is probably 60,000. Top 1,600 communities with that rating from the GFOA. Um, So that's the Triple Crown. Very impressive, frankly. Now
And
that
that
is
translates to average residents who aren't in finance, but have to pay a tax bill twice a year. And they open up that envelope, it's like, oh my gosh, look at all this.
sure,
But the city portion is smaller than the school portion.
right.
But
The
they're
city,
really getting a good, at times it's frustrating because I know I get frustrated when I get my tax bill, like, oh my goodness, I gotta pay all this money. But if you picked up your house from Lake Forest and moved it to any other city, certainly in this county, the tax bill would go up, right?
oh yes, it would. If you moved your house from Lake Forest to Libertyville, it would be substantially higher for the city portion of your tax bill. And so you can look at the numbers, but um, we've looked at that, and the city council monitors that pretty closely. What is the comparable tax bill in these other communities when you move your 2,500 square foot house or your 4,000 square foot house to another community? It's a big increase. So the school districts are about half of the school bill, half of the tax bill. Ours is 22%, and then Lake County and its various agencies make up the difference.
And Lake County, not that you had anything to do with it, Lake County, uh, their portion of the tax bill, they literally doubled their percentage, I think from 2.5 to 5. We had Ben Grum on and Andy Dalkin on a few weeks ago to talk about that. Um, but so even with, and we're not as dependent on sales tax as say Vernon Hills
Sure,
or even Lake Bluff,
sure,
because we don't have a lot of retail. I mean, we
right.
don't have any car dealerships really. We don't have any
Charge more tax on art galleries.
I
we
think
don't
that
have
Lake Bluff, from the canals and Target, that makes up about 40% of their budget. So they have the benefit of those things, but
but
they also
even with
have to
all that, we still have managed to keep our taxes lower than them.
correct. Right.
That's pretty
So
amazing. And we have I think most people are happy with the quality of their services. I always say that the big three, the three things I think every resident, no matter what their income level is, depends on from their local government are police department, fire department, and the public works department. We all
streets and
use the
sewer.
streets, we all use the sewers. We all, God forbid, someday might need to call 911 for either a police or fire emergency, and we want that confidence that they will get there and do the job they
$1,600
need
bucks
to.
for an ambulance.
Well, that's
Most of it
true.
usually
So
covered by insurance, though. But yeah.
you know how many ambulance runs we have from Route 41 to the
No, I
hospital
don't.
for all those people driving through?
Oh, I
Yes,
can imagine.
that's a big problem. But the other thing is, I know Senator Garrett talked about, well, wouldn't it be better to maybe just spend money on the streets?
Yeah, address that, Jed, please.
Yeah, well, so the issue is it looks patchwork, which is I think what her point was, and wouldn't it be better to do the whole street? But the whole street is substantially more expensive than doing what we do now, which means in the end, for our budget, our fixed capital budget that we're trying to maintain, means far fewer streets are getting attention. And the city contracts with a company that drives those streets with sensors and evaluates all the streets in Lake Forest every year to which ones need repair the most and which don't.
Like,
and then they
like
work that in.
McKinley?
Go ahead. Well, that works its way into their capital projects plan. So they have every project that you can think of on their list of to-dos for capital projects. And then they go through this very disciplined process of rating each of those projects they have a 9-point criteria that they award points for. And then you add it all up and you take the top 10% of those, or 15%, I don't know the exact number, but the ones with the biggest point rating from the city, those are the projects that get forwarded to the city council for funding as part of their capital plan. So they're very disciplined about where to put their capital in a rational and reasonable way. So it's
I was giving you a little crap there.
uh,
McKinley looks like it's getting a new road.
It is. It is. Well, I would say the curbs and the side. I had to send in a complaint because the people walking up and down McKinley keep falling over the sidewalks that haven't been fixed in a long time.
That's just Pete drunk.
You ever go
No
out on
such
McKinley
thing as drunk.
That's just Pete stumbling home from the lantern.
Yeah, well, we had to fix those sidewalks. So I think that's where Director Thomas has said, well, let's fix the curbs and the sewers there too.
Okay.
So
my daughter's going to be a senior at the high school. So if you do any work, please wait till after she graduates, so we don't have to deal with that traffic.
Just to warn you, I don't know if you saw the meeting.
Oh yeah,
at the Deerpath water main project that's coming up. Going to be a big deal for the community.
Yes, Deerpath in Green Bay.
What's going to happen? Who's going to complain?
My daughter will.
There was a problem last year during the rains where the water main under Deerpath failed because of some sensor problems, and they had to fix that. Well, it's a very old system, and again, that's where you have to evaluate where are you going to put your money.
Yeah, it had to be done. I don't think we could go through another winter without doing that. It's just, and it is what it is. Look, I won't repeat all the words. Back when we were doing that project at 41 in Deerpath, what was it, last year? That was, and my daughter wasn't old enough yet to drive, so I was driving her every morning, and that was a little rough. But construction is what it is, right? I mean, we're all nobody likes construction, but when it's done, the road's in great shape. And before it's done, everybody's like, when are they going to fix this road? Oh my goodness.
That's another point I want to make for you guys is that was primarily grant funded. So it didn't cost the city that much. But the important part is that when I started in 2017, I happened to run across how much grant money Deerfield was raking in. And Bob Kiley was the mayor at the time. I said, how do we get better at getting our share of grant funding? And I have to say that the city manager and the staff have done a really good job of going out and soliciting new grant funding for all kinds of stuff that means that we don't have to pay as much in our city taxes. And I think they've done a remarkable job of finding grants for all this stuff.
Well, we pay a lot to the state in income taxes.
Yes, you do.
Here in Lake Forest. And I bet in sales taxes too, with all the shopping we have to do elsewhere, or even if you shop on Amazon, you have to pay state sales tax now. So we should get some of that back.
Yeah,
I appreciate the
exactly.
lobbying efforts that the city has done over the years, and our state legislators have been helpful with
Yeah,
that as well.
yes,
So,
they
but
have.
back to the stuff at the city though. So people, people want, I think most people can agree that the current police station has outlived its lifespan. Back when they built that police and fire station in the 60s, they were previously in the late colonial building. People, the old
That's correct.
timers will remember
Long,
that.
yes.
But they've been in there since the 60s, but there were no female police officers or firefighters back then, so they didn't have female locker
Exactly.
rooms, and certainly now we have female police and firefighters. So
Hmm.
um,
Sure.
just that alone merits some expansion, but also
Yeah.
the methods of policing have changed. They need more space. They can't even conduct, investigative interviews in a private office space, apparently,
Hmm.
in there. So I think there's an agreed level that something needed to change.
Yeah.
Moving the police station, you can move a police station anywhere in town because the police are out on patrol. It's not
Correct.
like a fire station that should be centrally located because the engines stay there until a call. But police
Yeah.
are all over the place. So it doesn't matter if the police station's on the east side, the west side, wherever. It's
Well,
they
another thing along those lines, I know there was a lady at the meeting on the 15th with the city council brought up the issue of if there was a major incident at Sheridan School, but the police station was out in Westlake Forest, what would that mean in terms of police response? And my thought is that there's always a guy in that ward that's cruising around. There's a sergeant that can get there. The guy over in the person, the fire, the police chairman over at Ward 3 out west could get there pretty quickly. But then Lake Bluff can send people. Vernon Hills can send people. Highwood can send people. They have a very um, strong mutual support agreements in place for those other departments to respond to significant events. So I think I understand her concern, and certainly if there was a big problem at Sheridan School, but that's a big issue. But I think you're going to get a lot of officers there very quickly.
yeah, I mean, the Highland Park tragedy on the 4th of July a couple of years ago, the famous picture of the police officer with his responding with his hands in his face at one point. That's a Lake Forest police officer
Sure.
who was in that photo. So, there is this mutual aid. They all help each other. I was just at Ravinia the other night and I saw a Lake Forest police officer on duty there. So there
Yeah.
is mutual aid. They do help each other. And people always forget that it takes us longer as citizens to drive somewhere than a police car with its
And the siren.
flashing
Right.
lights and the sirens. So,
Well, there's also, I don't
um,
know if you're aware, that major crimes task force that we're part of in Lake County. So there is just a broad network of police resources that are available at any moment in time to come to your support. So I'm not terribly concerned about, could they get there in time for a major incident at the school? I think they could, in
and
my
that
opinion.
there, the talk of that large building that the city is buying or has bought now, the on Field Drive or Field Court, forgive me, I can't remember, but they're talking about having groups like the Major Crimes Task Force move in there on the upper floors
Yeah,
of that, which would be, I think, a very good plus for us
sure.
here in Lake Forest to have those resources at our fingertips.
Yeah, and the lease revenue would be good too for
And the lease
offsetting
revenue
the
would
cost
be,
of the building.
Subletting. Jed,
Yeah.
you've been listening and watching the show, or not listening and watching the show, admittedly, for quite a while. What have we gotten right and what have we gotten wrong that you said, you know what? Those guys, they didn't know this, or what are your thoughts over the years? And number two, any other things popping up that people are going to object to that we can head them at the pass? Because there's so much misinformation around and there's so much
Hmm. Sure.
laziness that people don't have the time or want to look into issues further. I'll hang up again and listen for my answer, Jed.
Well, no, you're right. I've been in and out of your podcast over the years. The thing I think that makes it great is the people you bring to the program, so you can hear people firsthand in their own voice what their concerns are, what their solutions are. I think that's the big help for the community, because the other aspect is social media, which is rampant, as we know, everywhere, and it tends to exaggerate some of the issues without full knowledge of what the details are. So that's a thing that I think the city's fighting. I think they have a great PR department. They put out that thing on Fridays, the newsletter. I think the website has a huge amount of information. You can go on and dig into any financial aspect of the city through the city website. It's just all there, but it's hard for people, I think, maybe to get out there and see it. So they rely on what's showing up on their phone, and I understand that. But the more you can do to bring people that have valid opinions or
Yeah.
answers, I think that's terrific.
And the city's been pretty transparent about all of this stuff, right? I mean, I think they won an award for transparency at some point, right?
Well, I think they do. But you'd hear people in the community say we're not. I don't understand that. The police projects have been going for 6 months with multiple discussions and meetings and such, but you wouldn't know that from some of the conversation. And I understand it's hard to dial into all this stuff, but that's a problem. And the more you can do to bring that stuff to the surface and get people to talk about it, that's great.
But this chart that you brought us today, it's on the website for the city. All of that stuff's there,
it was in
right?
the meeting last week, the 15th, whenever it was.
Nobody knows what that means.
So it takes a little bit of explanation. I agree. Both that and I have another slide. Let me show you the other slide.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's out there. Just a second here. Let me stop this one because this is the pension one. Just a second. This is not in the meeting, but it's available. Let's see here. There we go. There we go. So we would meet with our pension actuaries every year, and Director Holla has set up a modeling of our pension obligations going forward. So the red line is the track we are on. This is for the police department. So you can see how it's been increasing, primarily based on benefit increases that the state had mandated. And actually, it was Mayor Tack who brought this to the attention when he was an alderman. This is not sustainable for communities, and this doesn't include fire, to keep raising this, and it just sucks money out of all the other things we can do. So we did this modeling, and by increasing our pension payments a little bit in the front end, we're able to see the green line. Now it's changed a little bit because we remodeled it this year, but it basically was flat out into the future. So you don't have that, the residents paying up into 2040, and then it drops off to virtually nothing for the future residents. That's not fair. They should pay for the future pension obligations of the police department when it comes due in their lifespan. So,
Alderman, what did Mayor Tack do? That was one of the things I remember when he was running. That was one of the things that he brought up that he did. Like, what did he do to lower that? 'Cause everywhere else, pensions are killing.
Yeah, he became alarmed at the fast rising pension fund. So you can see the green line off to the left. That's where we're heading. And he said, "Whoa, this is not feasible. It's going to kill us." So what he did is he asked the city council to put a charge on the bill that you get each year from the city for water services and other stuff, and then you'll see a pension contribution number. And he did that to bring it to everybody's attention, so they would say, "Whoa, what is that?" So that it would bring enough people into the conversation about how do we fix this. And that led to the working with the actuaries and coming with a different modeling process to flatten out the contributions into the future.
So what happened? Like what happened that got changed? Because if it's going down, how did it go back up? So you put it on the bill and said, "What, we have to fund more of this?" Like, what did he do?
No, it was just I think it's kind of like a flat charge. I'd have to go back and look. It just shows up just to bring people's attention. It doesn't pay for the pension contribution. It comes well short of that, but it was intended to be a alert. You guys have to pay attention to this because it's getting out of control.
What can be done? Because a lot of this is driven by state legislation.
Correct.
The city can't pick and choose which kind of pension it gives its employees. It's defined by state law.
Correct.
And police and fire, they retire sooner than other workers. You don't want a 60-year-old fireman trying to climb a ladder for a burning building and rescuing two children
Sure.
and or hunting or chasing down a criminal. So, all my friends that chose police and fire careers have retired because they said, hey, you got to give way to these young guys that can do the job. So the pensions, but they structure police and fire pensions differently than they do, other types of work where people work longer. But as you said, missing pension payments would have been a real problem, right?
Big problem, because we're only about 60% funded in our current pension liability. Hence, we need to get it fully funded by out there in 2040. Let's talk about extending that to 2055, I think.
How do you fund it? That's what I don't know.
Out of taxes. So if you look at the city budget, that's a tax item in the budget every year for the police pension contribution, the fire contribution, and for the city municipal workers. Their pension.
But do we have to raise taxes in order to fund the?
We would have, sure. Yeah, we would have had to raise taxes to pay for, if we had stayed on this red model that the state mandated, we would have had a tax increase.
So we raised taxes to pay it. That's all I want to know, and I'll hang up.
No, we avoided. I think he's saying.
Yeah, we're not raising.
We avoided a tax increase because of what Mayor Tack did when he was in office.
So the model says we're going to run out of about $3 million a year for the police, maybe 3.2, going out all the way to 2040. It's just flat, and so as a percentage of our budget, that'll actually shrink because the budgets will keep going up, but that'll be a flat rate. And so unless the state does another benefit adjustment, we should be in great shape. And the budget should actually be much stronger because it'll be flat. And inflation takes care of other city services. Will be in good shape. And I would say that the other thing is that the fire and police pension investment plan has moved to the state. The state has consolidated all of the 600 police and fire pension funds from a management perspective. So we don't have to pay for individual financial management of our funds. That's all now handled by the state. And they had a robust year this year. So, and Director Holub is on, I think it's the police state pension board. So she keeps a close eye on what's happening with the investment management group in Springfield. So that's been a plus.
So we've been able to make every police officer and firefighter that's retired has gotten every dime they're owed.
Yeah. Yes.
We've been able to keep the lowest municipal tax rate in Lake County and maintain a AAA bond rating all at the same time.
Correct.
And there's a lot of cities that can't say any of that.
Like Chicago. Pick one, yeah. No, that's correct. Which is why I feel pretty good about where the city is financially. And I think Moody's reiterated that in their latest rating. They need to protect their bondholders. So they're not going to hold back if they think there's an issue that might put their bondholders at risk. So
Lake Forest is a good investment for them.
It is. It is indeed. Among other cities in Illinois, I think you're looking at one of the best.
Any other things popping up down the road, Jed, that we can address? You brought up the water main on the west side, which I don't care about. That's the west side. We're on the east side.
Green Bay is not the west side, Pete.
No, I think we're in pretty good shape because, and I haven't been that close to the capital budgeting project listing that Director Hollow has. But the water plant was recently redone, so we have really good water. We have the fields. We've obviously the school district has done their finishing their project over the next few years. So I guess you could go to the rec center. Would it be good to modernize and upgrade the rec center? Well, that's an issue for future discussion. I don't know where the city council would come out on that, but
The
We
rec
have a new
center,
Parks and Rec director from Gurnee who took over,
right.
so I'm sure he's going to have some ideas
Mhm.
and thoughts on that from a professional standpoint.
Alderman, you got any thoughts on tournaments, bringing kids from out of town to come in the Lake Forest?
Yeah, that was an issue when we were dealing with the playing fields, because I think there was a strong sense in the city council that having tournaments with a lot of, so we rent out the fields to people who sponsor tournaments, and they go out and recruit different communities, soccer teams or lacrosse teams or whatever, to come and play in Lake Forest. I think they were very concerned about the parking and the traffic congestion that would happen from renting those fields out for tournaments. So that was a big issue for Sally, the former director,
Right.
as to how they might manage that in the future. And it would require, the idea was that she would go back and consult with the city council if they were contemplating a big event.
How can it be worse than 3 o'clock on a weekday?
That's true. I agree. But that was the concern. And you're right.
Well, and a comment I heard from a couple people at the city was that they deliberately underscheduled the fields for the first year because they wanted, hey, let's get acclimated with this. Let's get the local groups should get priority because we're paying taxes here in our city. But now that they'll have a year under their belt with this new fields, next year they'll be able to start utilizing it more, so people won't be walking by and seeing it empty half the time.
Right, exactly. Well, I try to drive through a fair amount, and I would say maybe 3/4 of the time there's activity out there, and it might not be the full field use, but there's stuff going on all the time, in my opinion.
Yeah, I hear doubters saying, and I don't understand their thinking, because it's like a peak activity thing, like seasonal, right? Baseball, there's certain times where people are going to play and the fields are going to be taken. There's going to be downside because you have people going off at an off hour looking in a field and saying there's nobody there and it's underutilized. It's more of when it's raining on the grass and the fields are all messed up, you have to cancel games. You don't have to do that anymore, especially all the rain that we had this year. We look like geniuses,
Sure.
right, Jed?
Yes. Well, and the middle school uses it for their outside activities. So it gets use during the day from the school, but probably doesn't take up the whole field, but they make good use of it. And then obviously at night and weekends, there's I have a grandchild who plays lacrosse over there on a pretty frequent basis. So I get over there to see what's going on.
They won state, didn't they, or fourth or something?
I'm not sure about.
They did well.
The high school lacrosse did.
Yeah. The high school coach would come on. We'd like to recognize them. Thank you. Continue.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they have a great program from what I can tell, but I'm not a lacrosse expert, so
Jed,
I just know it's a city in Wisconsin. That's all that I know about lacrosse.
Here, let me test the waters with this one, Joe. This is going to go nowhere. This is going to be a lead balloon. Block the box in McKinley. What?
Well, I think that's all been resolved.
Right.
I know the neighbors were concerned about the plan that was approved by the council, and I think they initiated a suit. It didn't against the city. It didn't go anywhere. So I'm hoping it's resolved. They're in the process now of building the first of the two houses that will be in front of the condominium. So I think that will help the issues, the concerns about the streetscape. But I think we'll have to see. I think a landscaping will help a lot. So
well, being an alderman, like you abstained. You live in one of their properties, and you had to abstain. Like, how did that go down? Being an alderman, that's one of the perks of being an alderman, having to deal with all that crap.
Well, the first one was we were in the process of buying our part of the condominium when I was an alderman. So I abstained on the vote because I was involved in, discussions with the Eltunian company about buying this thing. So I didn't think it's fair. But once I bought it and everything had been approved, I didn't feel it was appropriate to abstain. I'm now a neighbor. I don't have any financial interest in this new building. I'm a neighbor like anybody else in the first ward. And I felt that the suggestion that we should leave it as a park was not viable, because then the city ends up maintaining a park that nobody can really use. You can't park there. You'd have to walk there. So it would have been a use of city funds to maintain a park that nobody could really use. So it's better to have the property tax revenue and have it occupied by a structure.
And those are pretty dang nice.
Well, I like living here, but
I mean, you haven't invited me over, but I've been inside there. They look pretty nice.
Happy to have you. No, I think the Attorneys have done a nice job, in my opinion. And we'll see how the two houses come out, but based on what I've seen in the document, it should be two nice houses on the street that reflect the streetscape that's there now. I know the neighbors have put a lot of money into their houses, so it should be quite a nice stretch along Westminster, I think.
Without really interfering too much with the rest of the city. I think, it's kind of, what do they call it? Transit-oriented development, because it's near
What?
a lot of people, because it's near a train station. It's near the metro station.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a lot of people that want to be able to, just walk to the train when they commute in. Now, obviously, there's fewer people commuting than there used to be pre-pandemic, but what's the balance between preserving history and progress?
Well, yeah, that is a balance. I don't think you can say off the top of our heads what that should be. I think that's why we have the historic preservation.
1986.
But you have to modernize. The other thing is, we've had a lot of retail historically in Lake Forest, but it's dissipated. And if you
the
look,
Bootery just closed.
Yeah,
I heard.
around the country, the solution for that is having more people live in the central business district. So the more, in my opinion, the more we can do to foster apartments and central district population, 24/7 population, the better the city will be and the central district will be. I think there'll be more restaurants.
Why are there so many open storefronts, Alderman? Here's my magic wand. Wave it over Market Square. What do you do? TIFs, subsidies? What do you do?
Well, I worry about that too, because you walk through there. But that's happening all over the country.
People aren't shopping that way anymore.
They're not shopping that way. So what goes in there? I mean, there's only so many restaurants, so many spa things. I think the Lululemon and the other ones are doing pretty well from what I understand, but who else is going to come to that space? So that's where I'm hoping that we can get more apartments and people living around there. If you look at Highland Park, I know there's some controversy about the number of condominium buildings they're building around their downtown, but I think they have a more severe retail issue than Lake Forest does, and I think they're trying to attract more residents to live in the area.
They have more art galleries than we do. I mean, they're attacking their businesses over there. They're anti-business, just talking about Virginia brewing.
Yeah.
But I digress. So you're saying, well, if we put more condos in, we bring more people, but people aren't shopping that way. That means more people aren't going to shop there. So what do we do?
Well, no, they wouldn't shop there, but hopefully other services, again, maybe some more restaurants. I think, with the new bagel store on Deerpath and the Italian restaurants that's coming over on Western, and obviously the two we have now are doing a great business. So there's room for more competition. I think Duffer looks like they're doing pretty well. That's when I walk by. So I think there's room for more.
Well, Jeff's consolidating brands too. He had too many locations. Now he's bringing the brands together. I don't know. I haven't talked to him for a while, but if you're closing down some locations, I know that's more
Well, and more Lake Bluff. I
Lake
think
Bluff.
I think there was an issue with that mall in Lake Bluff that was specific to the mall, but because Susie Swirl also got affected by that. But they
You're right. It's a big issue, and I don't think there's a simple solution.
Yeah.
It's a nationwide issue based on what you're saying, internet.
Well, we'll close it out on this, Alderman. If in order to, I'm under the impression that the landowners that lease the property, I have a feeling they're making more money not leasing it than leasing it, or there's some magic number that they're trying to get. People have told me I'm wrong, and it's not the first time. But tax increment financing, which I don't know a lot about, and subsidies, how do you go about encouraging other people to come in when you've had people that are already there and they have their hand out too? How do you deal with that? Or no comment?
Yeah, I have not encountered that in my 6 years, and so that would be an issue for the council. I don't know that they're very enthusiastic about doing any of that for the private sector. So we'll have to see, but I would think they would shy away from that sort of stuff, my guess, but they'd have to weigh in on that.
Well, they resurrected the Gorton Center, right? That was a stone's throw away from bankruptcy, right?
Well, right. So that was the community. Community, if you remember, Brenda Dick got involved early and rallied a lot of community people to contribute to, I don't know, $5 million, whatever it was. They put a lot of money into that. So the city owned the building, but it was always managed by a private sector group that didn't do the job and let the building deteriorate. So the city now is taking care of the external aspect of Gorton, make sure that the roof and the windows and all that sort of stuff, the infrastructure is in good shape. And then the Gorton Association, the community group, has to maintain the interior. But that was a community effort. I think Mayor Pandelon was a part of that. And you go to this public partnership that we have, private-public partnership. The golf course, the improvements that have gone into the golf course have been that part of that. And I might say, Prue Byler, to give her some credit, she helped do that. The Forest Park out on the beach was a big public-private partnership. So you see a lot of that where government doesn't have to step up. The community steps up and raises the money and contributes to it. So that's a big plus for Lake Forest.
Will we be better having a Costco there?
I know a lot of people wish we had a Costco. I know all the people in Matawa appreciate the check they get every year.
Every time I go to Costco and I see all those Lake Forest municipal stickers on the cars,
Yes.
in the windshield, I'm like, what were they thinking, chasing these people out and over to the other? All they did was move over to the other side of the tollway. Don't get me started.
Well, Jason got a nice office now.
Somebody can ask Mike Rummel about that one.
Yes. Wasn't part of the group back then. So.
We would have had it.
Alderman Jed Morris, we're going to let you off the hot seat.
Yes, thank you, Alderman. You've been great. You've been great. This is great information.
Happy to come back if you got more questions. Happy to dig
deep. People are going to watch 5 minutes of this and pick something out and flame us, and then we'll bring it back on to correct it.
As Mayor Tack said, good government is boring government, right? So when you get into charts and graphs, a lot of people hold their eyes closed, but when they get that bill, they're like, whoa.
How did this happen?
Yeah, but that doesn't work for podcasts.
Well, I hope you like the charts. I thought they were helpful.
All right,
Alderman, thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye.
We'd also like to say we're thankful for our Patreon supporters, Otto, John C., Helen, Herrick, and J.M.